My name was Ahmad. I was an imam, a guide for my community in the heart of Berlin, a vibrant mosaic of cultures and faiths. For years, I stood at the front of the mosque, a symbol of tradition, respected and admired. Yet beneath the surface, a storm raged within me, fueled by doubt and an unshakable emptiness. Each Friday, as I led prayers, I felt the walls closing in, the weight of unspoken questions pressing against my soul. It was one ordinary Friday when everything changed. As I slipped into a trance during a moment of prayer, I experienced what can only be described as a brush with death. And in that restless silence, ensconced by darkness, he appeared, Jesus. Not in the way I'd been taught, not as a distant figure, but as a living reality calling me by name. In that profound encounter, I discovered truths that shook the very foundations of my existence. He revealed a spiritual battle, one that transcended religion, entwining itself in the very fabric of society. I realized then, the call of tradition had masked the truth. I had been ensnared in a web of religious obligation that kept me from true freedom. I fought against the revelation, torn between the fear of betrayal and the yearning for enlightenment. Upon returning to my life, the world felt alien. My community, once my refuge, now loomed with hostility towards my new understanding. A rejection that stirred a tempest of guilt and fear. I was left desperate to seek the truth outside the confines of my upbringing, tiptoeing through the shadows of secrecy, searching for others who understood the burden of such revelation. Now, I stand at a crossroads, compelled to share the light that burst forth from my darkness. It dares not be suppressed, for the truth I found is too powerful to ignore, and my heart burns with a mission to warn others still trapped in deception. I feel an urgency to ignite a spiritual awakening that shatters the chains that bind hearts, illuminating the path to true liberation. But before we dive deeper into this transformative journey, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Leave a comment below. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond, because the revelations I'll share could change your life forever. In the vibrant, multicultural neighborhood of Berlin, life unfolded in a beautiful tapestry of traditions and beliefs. The streets thrummed with the sounds of laughter, the sense of rich spices wafting from small cafes, and the rhythmic calls to prayer. As a son of the Muslim community, I had grown up surrounded by the teachings of my faith, where the bonds of family and collective identity were revered. However, beneath that surface joy was an echoing sense of dissatisfaction, a quiet murmur that hinted at uncertainties and doubts many in the community held, myself included. For years, I'd wrestled with my faith. On the exterior, I dutifully participated in prayers and community gatherings, immersing myself in the harmonious rituals that marked our lives. Yet, as I listened to our leaders preach about faith and devotion, I often found myself confronted with questions that seemed to go unanswered. The weight of tradition bore heavily on my heart, and I could feel the sense of disconnection growing. I was suffocated by a sense of duty, while inside a longing for something deeper, something that resonated with the very core of my being, remained unfulfilled. Then came the night of the fateful accident. I remember driving through the streets of Berlin, lost in thought, grappling with my internal conflicts when a car suddenly swerved into my lane. The impact was jarring, and just like that, the world faded to black. My consciousness slipped away, leaving behind the chaos of reality. In that darkness, however, I found myself in a surreal space where the boundaries between life and death dissolved. As I floated through this void, I felt a mixture of fear and calm until a blinding light pierced through the darkness, and I found myself in the presence of Jesus. Meeting him was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. Jesus stood before me, radiating warmth and love in a way that enveloped my spirit. He called my name, and in that instant, the burdens of doubt and fear I had carried for so long began to dissolve. As I stood there, Jesus shared powerful revelations that shook the foundation of everything I thought I knew. He unveiled the spiritual war waging around us, exposing the hidden agendas of the elite who manipulate the narratives that shape our beliefs. I witnessed visions of division and deception, where humanity was continually pitted against itself, all while the true essence of our spiritual heritage lay obscured by fear. In that moment of clarity, the truths began to unfurl before me, illuminating the connections between the political strife, social unrest, and the cultural norms we often accepted without question. I understood how these forces conspired to keep us complacent and confused, wrapped up in beliefs designed to foster division rather than unity. As Jesus poured forth these revelations, I felt a strong sense of urgency rising within me, the realization that many in my community were, like me, yearning for awakening but were trapped in the shadows of dogma. When I awoke in the hospital, the impact of my experience weighed heavily on my heart. I was filled with the understanding that I had been given a mission. Yet, the challenges ahead were daunting. My community had long adhered to traditions that left little room for questioning. How could I share these profound truths without alienating those I loved most? Each day became a delicate balancing act. I felt the strong pull to guide others toward awakening, while fearing the isolation that could follow. Nevertheless, the spiritual war we faced didn't just call for silence. It demanded that I take a stand for truth and shine a light on the hidden deception lurking in the shadows. It was a perilous path, but I was determined to embrace my new purpose, to help others find their way out of the darkness I had escaped. As I stood before my congregation in Berlin, clad in traditional attire that marked me as a leader, I felt an unsettling emptiness growing inside me. At 35, I had dedicated my life to serving as an imam, guiding others in their devotion, but with each passing day, the joy I once found in my duties faded, leaving behind a hollow space filled with doubt and uncertainty. I could hear the words of prayers around me, the rhythmic recitations of my community, yet they felt detached from the reality I was grappling with, a reality where the weight of rigid tradition suffocated my spirit. For so long I had pushed these feelings aside, convincing myself that I was fulfilling a noble purpose, but deep down, I was questioning everything. My life took a dramatic turn one evening, following a particularly stressful day at the mosque. While rushing home, caught in my thoughts, I felt a sudden jolt. A vivid car accident sent me spiraling into darkness. What came next was a surreal experience, an out-of-body sensation that felt strangely calming amidst the chaos of my life. In that void, I encountered Jesus, illuminated in a brilliant light that melted away my fears and doubts. His presence was overwhelming, filled with love and grace, yet it was his voice that left the deepest imprint in my soul as he called my name, urging me to awaken. In that sacred space, revelations unfolded like petals of a flower. Jesus revealed to me the spiritual war that raged both within me and around the world. I saw glimpses of societies divided by deception, manipulated by the elite who concealed the truth under layers of lies. The shadows of political agendas danced before me, the exploitation of belief for power, the wars waged not for the betterment of humanity but for profit and control. It struck me that many of us have been led into battle without even realizing it, pitted against one another while the true enemy remains hidden in plain sight. As these visions enveloped me, I felt the urgency to escape from the chains of tradition. The very structures that had once defined my existence but were now suffocating my spirit. Jesus' message resonated deeply. He was calling me to embrace the truth that could lead others from their spiritual darkness into the light. This revelation was not merely a personal epiphany, it was a fight against the systemic deception that kept believers in chains. I understood that by holding on to my role, I had been complicit in perpetuating beliefs that no longer served us. I was faced with a choice: to remain in the comfort of conformity, or to risk everything for the sake of awakening in truth. When I returned to consciousness, I felt both liberated and burdened. The experience transformed my understanding of faith and purpose, propelling me into a mission to share what I had learned. Yet with this newfound clarity came the fear of rejection from my community, the risk of being seen as a traitor. I envisioned the reactions of my family and peers. Would they turn away from me, viewing my awakening as an affront to tradition? This fear warred against my desire to transform lives, to help others recognize the beautiful truth that lies beyond the veil of deception. Determined to step forward, I began to speak out, whispering the truths I had been shown amid the tension of uncertainty. It was exhilarating yet terrifying, standing on the brink of a life fully committed to awakening, a life where I would confront the spiritual war around us and challenge the hidden agendas that abused our trust. I gathered with others who also felt the stirrings of change, invoking courage to break free from what held us captive. Each conversation felt like a small step towards a larger revolution, one rooted in love and truth. I understood that every moment spent in doubt was a moment stolen from the potential joy of awakening. It was time to embrace the path before me, to guide others from the darkness into the light, even if the journey came at a cost. In the stillness that enveloped the mosque during Friday prayers, I found myself grappling with an unsettling emptiness. As I led my congregation, reciting the verses with the fervor that had defined my life as an imam, a hollow ache grew louder in my heart. Each word I spoke echoed back to me, lacking the resonance I once felt. The beautiful rituals that surrounded me became mechanical, devoid of the spiritual fulfillment I craved. I looked around at the faces of my community, their expressions reflecting devotion, yet I felt a deep disconnect that seemed to swirl between us like smoke. Was I the only one who sensed this growing void within the fabric of our faith? As days turned into weeks, this emptiness transformed into insomnia. Nights stretched endlessly, while questions clawed at my mind. What did it really mean to have faith? Why were the teachings I once cherished no longer fulfilling? I began to fantasize about true spiritual freedom, one unbounded by the rigid traditions that felt stifling. This imagined freedom haunted me, taunting me with thoughts of a life where I could explore my spirituality without fear of disapproval or judgment. As I tossed and turned in the depths of night, I felt trapped in a spiritual war, torn between my role as an imam and the suffocating expectations that came with it. Then, one evening, something shifted. With the weight of my internal struggles hanging over me like a storm cloud, I found myself in a car, driving aimlessly through Berlin. My mind was a battleground, thoughts racing through my head as I sought answers to questions left too long unasked. Suddenly, a collision snapped me from my spiral. Metal crumpled, glass shattered, and in that split second, everything went dark. But rather than fear, I felt an odd sense of calm washing over me. I was enveloped in a stillness that felt expansive and freeing. In that darkness, I encountered Jesus. His light radiated through the void, pulling me gently closer until I felt encompassed by his presence. His gaze pierced through my soul, revealing the truths and realities hidden beneath the surface of my doubts. I saw the layers of deception woven into our society, the manipulation by those in power, the elite, who orchestrated the spiritual war we were unwittingly enmeshed in. I witnessed firsthand how the hidden agenda of these individuals kept communities divided and fearful, perpetuating cycles of ignorance and conflict. The burden of knowing this truth was staggering, yet so was the release. There was no longer room for ignorance where clarity had formed. When I returned to consciousness, the revelation swirled in my mind, igniting a fire within me that couldn't be extinguished. I longed to share what I had seen, to awaken those around me from their complacency. Yet, I was met with fear as I faced the mountain of societal norms that sought to drown my newfound understanding. What would my community think? Would they see me as a threat to their way of life? The nagging worry loomed large, playing out incessantly in my thoughts. There was a profound urgency within me to bridge this divide, to show others the light I had encountered. It was clear. I couldn't remain silent. My experience had transformed me, and now it was time to stand boldly for the truth, armed with the revelations Jesus had bestowed upon me. The path to awakening was fraught with challenges, but the need for spiritual liberation had never felt more critical. I was ready to confront the deception, to step into the light, and lead others toward their own truth. As I prepared for Friday prayers, I felt an unusual intensity in the air. The mosque was filled with the familiar hum of my community, but beneath that surface lay an undercurrent of tension that I could sense deep within me. I had been a respected imam for many years, but doubts had started to creep into my heart, casting a shadow over my conviction. During the prayers, I tried to focus, but as I recited the words, I felt myself slipping into a trance-like state. It was as if the world around me faded, and I was drawn into a deeper realm of consciousness. In that space, darkness surrounded me, thick and impenetrable. Yet within that void, a light began to emerge, piercing through the shadows. I heard a voice, calm, commanding, and so familiar. Ahmad, it called, and in that instant I knew it was Jesus. His presence filled the emptiness around me with warmth and peace. As I stood before him, every doubt I had felt melted away, replaced by a profound sense of understanding. Jesus revealed to me the ongoing spiritual struggle that humanity faced, a struggle obscured by the distractions of faith and the oppressiveness of traditions that kept us from the ultimate truth. Amidst this revelation, I witnessed scenes unfold before me. Conflicts rooted not in belief, but in manipulation by the elite, who wielded religion as a tool of control. I saw how wars were fought, not in the name of righteousness, but to perpetuate power and division among people. The realization struck me like thunder. I understood that many religious teachings, including my own, had been twisted to serve a hidden agenda that kept believers shackled to a distorted version of truth. Everything I had been taught began to unravel, revealing layers of deception that plagued us all. The spiritual war one witnessed was filled with clarity and urgency, urging me to awaken from the slumber of ignorance. I realized how often I had been distracted by traditions rather than focusing on the core message of love and compassion that Jesus embodied. I felt called to return to my community, to share what I had seen, but the weight of fear flooded me. Would they accept this revelation? Would they understand the need for awakening in the face of such profound manipulation? The thought of pushing against the tide of tradition was both exhilarating and terrifying, leaving me on the precipice of a monumental decision. As I began to regain my awareness, the words of Jesus lingered in my heart. He urged me to confront the deception head-on, to lead others toward the truth that could liberate them. I felt a burning desire to help those around me grasp the magnitude of the hidden agendas that trapped us. Yet, in the days that followed, I grappled with the tension between this new truth and the fear of backlash from my community. The stakes felt high. I was not just fighting for my spiritual life, but for the very souls of those I loved. The call to awaken resonated within me like a battle cry, demanding that I take a stand for truth, no matter the cost. As I prepared to share my experience, the weight of what lay ahead loomed large. An uncertain journey bound by faith, courage, and the will to shine light into the darkest corners. Returning to my everyday life after that encounter with Jesus was like stepping into a world transformed yet familiar. The moment I walked through the door of my family's home, I could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. They had no idea what I'd experienced, the depths of my encounter, and the revelations that now coursed through my veins. I was a pariah in my own family, and the realization hit me hard. I had gone from being a respected imam to a source of shame and anger. I could almost hear the whispers, "He's lost his way." The weight of their disappointment felt like a physical presence, constricting my heart and filling my mind with doubt. As days turned into weeks, I faced outright rejection from friends and community members. The very people I once clung to now distanced themselves. The anger directed at me was suffocating. Family members accused me of betrayal, questioning how I could doubt the teachings that had shaped our lives. They saw my awakening as a threat to their faith, as if I were pulling at the threads of a tapestry they had believed to be unbreakable. How could I share the truth about the spiritual war we were all facing when my own family turned their backs on me? Each painful confrontation left me grappling with guilt, questioning whether my pursuit of truth was worth the deepening chasm that grew between us. Yet, I knew I could not turn back. The truths Jesus revealed were etched into my soul, undeniable and life-altering. I was pulled toward exploring those truths further, yearning for a space where I could share my thoughts without fear of judgment. In the depths of my isolation, I sought out like-minded individuals who understood the struggle I was facing. I began attending gatherings outside my community, where I could openly discuss faith, spirituality, and the hidden agendas we often ignored. It was a relief to share my experiences without the weight of persecution. In those moments, I found comfort and empowerment in our shared journey toward awakening. Even as I embraced this new community, I could not shake the feelings of guilt for leaving my family behind. Were they truly better off in their ignorance, or was I destined to lose them forever? The worry gnawed at me, amplifying the urgency I felt about spreading the truth. I often reminisced about the moments we shared, the laughter, the love, the teachings, and yet those memories were tainted by the knowledge I now possessed. Would they ever come to understand the spiritual war that raged, the manipulation woven into the very fabric of our beliefs? The deception we faced was vast, and my heart ached to guide them into the light I had seen. In these moments of reflection, I felt the presence of Jesus guiding my every step. I clung to the hope that one day they would join me in the pursuit of that truth. My path felt treacherous. I was diving deeper into the unknown, advocating for a faith that embraced both questions and answers. With every story I shared at the new gatherings, I committed to dispelling the darkness that misled so many, even if it meant risking further isolation from those I once called my own. I yearned for the day when I could return not merely as a son or a brother, but as a beacon of light, ready to help them awaken to their own journey of truth in a world filled with deception. The struggle was ongoing, but I was resolute. The spiritual war required warriors willing to fight for truth no matter the cost. In the quiet hours after the Friday prayers, I began to feel the true weight of my doubt settling in around me. The vibrant community I had known all my life felt stifling, shadows creeping into the edges of my thoughts. My role as an imam brought with it respect and duty, but as I led prayers, a growing sense of disconnect gnawed at my spirit. I could no longer ignore the feeling that my faith had become more about tradition than the truth. It was a longing I couldn't understand, a yearning for something deeper, something that felt genuine, yet I didn't know where to turn. Driven by my desire for answers, I embarked on a secret quest, carefully researching Jesus and the tenets of Christianity. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, I began to navigate through online testimonies, people sharing their transformative journeys and encounters similar to my own experiences. Each video and article felt like a thread connecting me to a community I had never imagined existed. As I listened to their stories, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, a realization that I wasn't alone in my struggles. Here were others who, like me, had faced the questions that faith often suppresses in silence. Yet, along with this newfound connection came an undercurrent of fear. I worried about the potential fallout from my explorations. How would my community react if they discovered my interest in Christianity? Would they see it as a betrayal of my culture and family? The thought weighed heavily on my heart, but I couldn't shake the urgency I felt in seeking the truth. There was an awakening happening within me, a profound recognition that the spiritual war one had sensed was indeed real, and that many were being held captive by a hidden agenda that sought to obscure the truth. As I connected with a small underground Christian group, I felt the warmth of acceptance. In their company, I felt free to question without fear of judgment. Together we discussed the spiritual struggles we faced, peeling back layers of deception that had dominated our lives. Each encounter deepened my resolve to stand firm in my convictions, to seek the truth even if it meant challenging the established norms. My heart raced as I shared my revelations about the manipulation of religious principles by the elite, how those in power twisted faith to keep us in a cycle of fear and division. Each story exchanged felt like a spark igniting a larger fire of awakening. At the same time, I held tightly to the mixed emotions that flowed through me. The thought of leaving behind the familiar, the comfort of tradition, haunted me. Would my family ever understand my yearning for a truer faith? Could I bridge the worlds of my past and the discoveries I was making? The conflict within me escalated as I wrestled with the potential loss of my cultural identity while forging a new spiritual path. The tension was palpable, a reminder of the sacrifices that often accompany genuine transformation. Every conversation, every connection, made me realize that the journey to embrace the truth was not without its challenges. But I sensed it was a journey worth embarking on, both for myself and for those around me. The urgency of my calling became clearer with each passing day. I committed myself to not only understanding but also advocating for an awakening within my community. I wanted to share the truth I had found in Jesus, the liberation that came from recognizing the manipulation we faced as a society. This was not just about my individual journey. I felt a relentless push to help others see beyond the veils of deception that clouded their minds. As I prepared myself to take this leap, I understood that the path would be fraught with obstacles and doubt, but I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. There was a spiritual war to fight, and I knew I had to be part of the battle for truth, a battle that demanded courage, resilience, and unwavering faith in the light of Jesus. Over time, as I reflected on my transformation, it became clear that my experience was about much more than just my own awakening. I felt a deep, undeniable calling to share the message I had received, a message so vital that it felt like a responsibility I could no longer ignore. Jesus had revealed profound truths to me during our encounter that extended far beyond personal salvation. They were warnings about the deception I had lived through, the manipulation that ensnared not just me but my entire community. The urgency of this revelation bubbled beneath the surface, igniting a fire within me to speak out, even at the risk of my own life. Initially, the thought of breaking my silence was paralyzing. I envisioned the backlash I might face, the anger from my family, the ostracism from my community. The stakes felt impossibly high. I had grown up in a culture where questioning tradition often led to severe repercussions, yet I sat on a treasure of truth that needed to be shared. I began to see how many others remained shackled by fear, manipulated into accepting the lies fed to us by those in power. The elite had woven a narrative that kept us compliant, and it was time to cut those strings and awaken the dormant spirits among us. As I began to muster the courage to share my experiences, I found solace in small gatherings of like-minded individuals. Together we discussed the spiritual war raging around us, how so many face similar battles in silence. The conversations were raw and layered, filled with visceral emotion as we unpacked our encounters with Jesus and the insights that followed. With every story shared, my confidence grew. Others joined in, advocating for truth and dismantling the deceptions that held us captive. Yet I could not shake the fear that, in turning toward this new life, I might alienate those I loved. I remember a particular conversation with a friend I had revered since childhood. He was empathetic but wary, his brow furrowing as I recounted my visions. "You're walking a dangerous path, Ahmad," he warned. "What you're saying could destroy everything we've built. Don't you see that?" His words cut deep, echoing the fears I harbored within. But I also felt an empathetic urgency to shake him awake, to help him see the larger picture. The hidden agendas lurking in the shadows, seeking to distort our beliefs and separate us from our true selves. The discomfort in our discussion was palpable, but it was part of the process. Awakening is rarely comfortable. Days turned into weeks, and my resolves intensified. I was no longer just sharing my journey. I felt compelled to warn others about the spiritual war that threatened to consume us all. I began organizing small gatherings to discuss faith openly, encouraging others to explore their own doubts and embrace the truth without fear. Each meeting carried a sense of risk, but also a thrill of empowerment. The reality of our shared struggles became clear. We were collectively carving out a space for awakening, determined to break free from the deception entrenched in our belief systems. However, my heart remained heavy, torn between the joy of this newfound purpose and the pain of separation from my family. I realized that to embrace this journey fully, I would have to confront this duality head-on. As I grew in resolve, so did my commitment to sharing every revelation Jesus had delivered to me. I knew the road wouldn't be easy, but the urgency of awakening those still trapped in confusion propelled me forward. I was ready to face not just the external world, but the internal conflicts that brewed within my soul, believing that in doing so I could help ignite the flame of truth in others as we all navigated the complexities of this profound spiritual war together. Choosing to leave my home was the hardest decision I ever had to make. I stood there in the shadows of the life I had known, surrounded by the familiar scents and sounds of my community in Berlin. As a respected imam, I had devoted my life to serving others, yet internally I felt a growing discontent. The structure of my existence, once comforting, had become a cage, suffocating my spirit. The rituals and traditions, which had once been a source of pride, now felt like chains. My encounter with Jesus had irrevocably changed me, and I could no longer live a lie. My heart ached for authenticity, for a truth that resonated with the revelations I had witnessed during my near-death experience. After much soul-searching, I resolved to live openly as a Christian. It wasn't just about changing my faith, it was about embracing a new identity that aligned with my awakening. I felt the weight of the past pushing against me, but I knew that stepping into the light required courage and conviction. Every step away from my previous life was imbued with fear. The fear of being rejected, ridiculed, or misunderstood. Yet, as I walked away, I felt an exhilarating sense of freedom. I was no longer shackled by the expectations of those who couldn't understand my journey. Instead, I was ready to embark on a mission to share the truths I had discovered. In this new chapter, I committed myself to evangelizing, sharing my transformative experience with others who might still feel trapped within their beliefs. I started small, gathering a few like-minded souls in quiet settings, spaces where we could openly discuss our spiritual journeys. Each conversation became a powerful revelation. Everyone brought their own doubts and tribulations, their struggles against the oppressive norms that had stifled their spirits. I saw in their eyes the same longing I had felt, the desire for truth, for awakening, free from the manipulation of the elite who constructed barriers around our souls under the guise of religion. As I shared my testimony, I felt raw emotions rise within me, a compelling mix of responsibility and urgency. I recounted my experiences during that dark moment when I met Jesus. I described how he revealed the hidden agendas behind the deceptions that have kept us all ensnared in fear and division. The reality of the spiritual war we faced became evident as I spoke. I illustrated how the elite use our beliefs as tools to control, to distract us from true unity and peace. The more I shared, the more I felt the fire of conviction ignite in others. But this journey wasn't without its challenges. With every step I took toward this new life, the risk of backlash loomed large. Each day, I faced the possibility of rejection from family and friends. Would they understand that my journey toward Jesus wasn't a betrayal, but rather a deeper exploration of faith? This gnawing doubt, intertwined with the exhilaration of sharing the truth, made the path ahead feel precarious. I prayed for guidance and the strength to continue, hopeful that the light I had found could illuminate the way for others. My heart remained open, fueled by a profound belief that awakening was possible, even in the shadows of despair. The mission ahead was daunting, but with Jesus guiding me, I was ready to confront the spiritual war that demanded my voice, my courage, and my commitment to truth. Years have passed since I left my childhood home, and I've built a new life in a different country, yet the echoes of my past still resonate deeply within me. Now, I actively engage in my evangelistic mission, sharing my story with anyone willing to listen. Each time I recount my experience, the moments of darkness followed by the illuminating presence of Jesus, I witness the impact of my words on those who hear them. I can see the flicker of hope igniting in their eyes as they recognize fragments of their own struggles in my journey. It's a humbling realization that my personal awakening can inspire others to seek their truth amidst a world rife with deception. Even as I immerse myself fully in this new purpose, the ache for reconciliation with my family and community stubbornly lingers in my heart. I think of the faces of those I left behind, my friends and family members who still cling to the traditions that defined our lives. I remember the warmth of family gatherings, the laughter that filled our home, and the teachings that guided my upbringing. Yet now, I stand on the other side, armed with revelations that have changed my very essence. The division between my current self and the Ahmad they remember feels vast, and the thought of bridging that gap fills me with both hope and trepidation. At times, I wrestle with the fear of judgment. What would they think if they knew the extent of my beliefs? Would they see me as a traitor to our shared faith? Would they understand the spiritual war one faced? The manipulation by the elite, the hidden agendas that have so often silenced the truth? My newfound identity often feels like a double-edged sword. It offers me strength and purpose, but it also isolates me from the familiar comfort of my former life. The urgency to awaken those still caught in the cycle of deception drives me forward, yet each step feels heavy with the weight of what might be lost. In my mission, I've encountered many who felt similarly trapped, yearning for something more from their spiritual lives. Our collective conversations are charged with intensity as we share our discoveries and confront the realities of our pasts. Each story adds layers to the tapestry of our shared experience, an affirmation that we are not alone in our struggles. Strong bonds form as we navigate the intricacies of faith, betrayal, and the awakening we desperately seek. I feel a profound sense of responsibility to guide others through this darkness, to help them see the truths that have been hidden from them. As I forge ahead, I cling to the belief that transformation is possible. I've seen the power of truth ripple through lives, awakening spirits to their potential. But I can't shake the worry that perhaps, in my pursuit of this new path, I've severed ties that may never be mended. I hold on to a flicker of hope that, one day, my family will come to understand the truths I've embraced. I continue to pray for that reconciliation, even as I work tirelessly to spread the message of love and awakening. I know the path is fraught with uncertainty, but deep within me the conviction burns bright. Standing for the truth means standing for each and every soul willing to awaken, no matter the cost. As I stood before the congregation during Friday prayers, the weight of my responsibilities felt heavier than ever. In my role as an imam, I was expected to embody strength and certainty, yet I struggled with a profound emptiness that gnawed at my spirit. Each recitation of the Quran echoed in my mind, but instead of finding solace, I was confronted with a growing sense of disillusionment. The chants of devotion surrounded me, yet I felt detached, questioning the very foundation of my faith. The truth hung like a shadow over me, casting doubt where there once was certainty, and I knew I had reached a turning point in my spiritual journey. The moment of transformation came abruptly. One evening, overwhelmed by confusion and despair, I found myself in a terrible car accident. In an instant, the world faded away. I slipped into an abyss, a state of suspended consciousness where time and space lost their meaning. Then, enveloped in utter darkness, I felt a radiant light beckoning me, illuminating the void around me. As I drew closer, I recognized the figure standing before me, Jesus. His presence radiated love, acceptance, and an understanding beyond my comprehension. As he called my name, I felt every burden I had ever carried lift from my shoulders, replaced by an overwhelming sense of grace. In that moment, Jesus shared truths that shattered the illusions I had long believed. He revealed the ongoing spiritual war that raged not just within me, but across the globe. I witnessed how the elite crafted a hidden agenda, using fear and manipulation to maintain control over society. The deception I had felt all my life became painfully clear. I observed scenes of conflict and division, the very forces that kept people like me trapped in cycles of ignorance and conformity. The urge to wake up and break free from these chains surged within me, igniting a passion for awakening that felt invigorating yet terrifying. When I returned to consciousness, the harsh reality of my life hit me like a tidal wave. The revelations I had experienced surged through my veins, but I quickly realized the implications of sharing them. Would my community accept this new understanding? Or would they cast me out, viewing me as a threat to their traditions? The fear of rejection gripped my heart as I faced the daunting task of articulating my experience and the spiritual truths I now embraced. This awareness felt like both a blessing and a curse, a gift that burdened me with the weight of responsibility. I understood that I was called to speak out, to reach those who were still ensnared by the deceptions I had escaped. In the days that followed, I struggled to find a safe space to explore my beliefs openly. I sought out connections with others who shared similar experiences, longing for a community where I could question and grow without the shackles of judgment. As I connected with fellow seekers, the emotional intensity of our discussions was palpable. We shared our journeys, the struggles we faced in navigating the spiritual war, and the urgency of awakening others. Each testimony further fueled my resolve, reinforcing the idea that our fight against deception required unity and courage. Unfortunately, the lingering pain of potential loss from my family and community remained a constant reminder, a bitter taste that surfaced with each recollection of our shared past. The more I engaged with my new community, the deeper my desire grew to share the profound truths I had received. I envisioned organizing small gatherings, spaces where others could explore their spiritual battles in a protected environment. Yet my fears never truly dissipated. I worried that by challenging the ideals I had been raised with, I would face isolation, but I couldn't ignore the call within me, the call to awaken others to the truths hidden in plain sight. The spiritual war one had witnessed demanded action. It required that I step into the light of truth and help others find their way out of darkness. The internal conflict fueled my passion for evangelizing this newfound faith, and I resolved to trust in Jesus as my guide, believing that the awakening of those around me would ultimately lead to a brighter, more unified future. As my journey unfolds, I find myself grappling with both the light I discovered and the shadows of my past. I've walked a path that led me through darkness into the brilliant embrace of grace, a transformation that transcends my own understanding. But every triumphant step forward feels entwined with the haunting presence of those I left behind, the community that once defined me. I realize now that I'm not merely seeking to enlighten myself. I'm compelled to help others unveil the truths woven into the fabric of our existence, even as fear pulls at the edges of my heart. The urgency in my spirit has awakened a boldness I never knew I possessed. The revelations I received from Jesus about the spiritual war surrounding us surpasses any discomfort I feel about stepping outside the confines of tradition. It's as if I've been entrusted with a sacred mission to ignite awakening in souls who hover on the brink of despair, trapped in the very deceptions I once accepted without question. It's a calling I cannot ignore, a fire that beckons me to share my voice in the cacophony of lies that fill our world. But let me ask you, have you felt that same tug of urgency within you? Is there a whisper echoing in your heart, urging you to confront the realities of your own life? Are you awakened to the hidden battles waging around you? A struggle that may very well redefine everything you thought you understood about faith and tradition? I invite you to share your thoughts, your stories, and your own experiences in the comments below. Every word shared is a step together in this journey, a collective awakening amid a world yearning for truth. If this testimony resonates with you, consider subscribing to Truth from Beyond and hitting that notification bell. the revelations do not stop here. We are just beginning to peel back the layers of deception that bind us. Together, we will explore more testimonies, each offering a glimpse into the profound truths waiting to be discovered. In our next video, we will dive into another extraordinary account, revealing the strength found in vulnerability and the transformative power of faith. Thank you for being here for this journey. My name is Ahmad, and together we will continue to seek the truth that lies beyond the veil of ignorance, because the light of awakening is brighter when it shines together. Don't forget, the story doesn't end here. It's only the beginning.